Hello, everyone. So we are going to talk about OpenTelemetry developments that have taken place in Prometheus since last year's PromCon. I'm Arve Knudsen. I'm a software engineer at Grafana Labs, where I work on Grafana Mimir.
And I'm Owen Williams. I'm also at Grafana in the databases upstream team working on OpenTelemetry and Prometheus.
Yes. So basically, for a recap, at last year's PromCon, which took place in Berlin, we announced general availability of the OpenTelemetry ingestion endpoint in Prometheus. And in the meantime, we have been very busy adding improvements to Prometheus' support for the OpenTelemetry standard, both in terms of functionality and also OpenTelemetry protocol ingestion performance. This is not the end, of course, to the improvements. There's plenty more to come, many of which are already in progress.
Mm-hmm.
And so we have divided this talk into sections. The first section is dedicated to the functional improvements, which have gone into Prometheus's OpenTelemetry ingestion.
Yeah, so as we heard yesterday, there's still a lot of rough edges around integrating OpenTelemetry with Prometheus, and we're sort of working on those things one at a time and trying to smooth the experience. And so one major sort of piece of work in the past year has been the ability to allow for optionally untranslated metric and label names when ingesting into Prometheus. So this is for often, users who are used to OpenTelemetry and the semantic conventions, and they want to have those original names show up in Prometheus when they ingest using the OTLP endpoint. So previously, when doing the ingestion, dots would always be converted to underscores, and suffixes would always be added as per sort of the Prometheus style and specification. That is still the default. There's no plans to change that from the default. But for those users who know what they're doing and want those untranslated names, they can set the translation strategy option for the new no translation option. This is since Prometheus 3.4. So no character conversion is performed. Everything just passes through unchanged. As mentioned in the previous talk, this can cause problems with type and unit. If you have some sort of latency metric, one coming from one system that's in seconds and another coming from another system that's in milliseconds, those could collide. So we also strongly recommend that operators turn on the type and unit labels in order to prevent those collisions, and that's since version 3.6. There are two other translation options to make the grid of 4. Those are not very recommended. Users, some people need them. One of them is for compatibility with the current option in Mimir, but generally those are highly discouraged. You either want the Prometheus version or the OpenTelemetry version, and not some sort of weird mangling of the two.
Right, so another feature that was added since version 3.6.0 of Prometheus is promoting of OpenTelemetry scope metadata to metric labels. So the background here is that scope metadata is considered to be identifying in the OTL model, and it was not too long ago made a requirement in the OpenTelemetry to Prometheus translation spec that these scope metadata attributes, they should also be included as metric labels, because then they are part of the metric identity. So so we added this functionality to Prometheus, but it is disabled by default for backwards compatibility, even though it is recommended to enable through the config parameter OTLP.promote scope metadata. When OTL scope metadata attributes are promoted to labels, these labels have the prefix OTL underscore scope underscore. And when the functionality is enabled, there will be 3 standard scope labels which you can expect, which are OTL scope name, OTL scope version, OTL scope schema URL, but then there can be a number of other labels, kind of depending on which OTL scope attributes are present. And a bug fix that was introduced in version 3.1.0 of Prometheus is something that had simply been overlooked, which is that OpenTelemetry metric metadata was not converted into Prometheus equivalent, but that is now in place.
So another thing that we've worked on, and something that Fiona talked about yesterday, is initial support for delta temporality metrics. So this is going to be pretty redundant to what she said in much more complete terms. But yeah, since version 3.4, it's possible to ingest delta metrics over OTLP without using the delta to cumulative converter. They act like gauges, although they show up as an unknown counter type. And this is only the first step towards full delta support because, as Fiona talked about, you need to do extra work in your queries in order to sum up the deltas and then perform the operations you normally would on regular counters. So, rate and increase don't work by default. You need a rate over time or a sum over time. And then this is toggled with a feature flag as opposed to a configuration flag, the OTLP native delta ingestion flag.
And here's a feature I'm quite fond of myself, which is that Prometheus is now able to convert non-exponential OpenTelemetry histograms to native histograms with custom buckets. So the context is that when it comes to exponential OTL histograms, they are converted to native histograms, which is the preferred format. Whereas by default, when Prometheus receives non-exponential histograms over OTLP, they will be converted to so-called classic Prometheus histograms, which are really an emulation of histograms. So in effect, it means that each non-exponential histograms entering Prometheus via OTLP is translated into multiple samples in Prometheus, one per classic histogram time series. So this is not ideal. So since version 3.4.0, Prometheus has the ability to convert the non-exponential OpenTelemetry histograms to native histograms with custom buckets, so-called. This is again off by default for backwards compatibility, but the huge benefit is that when this is enabled, the OTL data points are converted to like in a one-to-one correspondence to Prometheus samples, and that can make a big difference because it can prevent basically overloading the server, depending on how many OTL data points the client sends to Prometheus. In the meantime, due to customer demand, really. Customer demand and internal, let's say, use cases demand at Grafana Labs. We have added the ability to promote also the so-called identifying OTL resource attributes to, well, no, not to promote, sorry, to keep rather the identifying resource attributes to keep them as labels on the target info metric, because historically and still by default, these identifying resource attributes, service.name, service.namespace, service instance ID, they have only been translated to the job and instance labels on target info, but the attributes are not kept as raw, let's say, rawly translated labels on target info. But some customers they wanted to see labels corresponding directly to these resource attributes as well on target info, and there are also some internal use cases where this comes in handy. So that has been introduced in version 3.1.0 of Prometheus, and it's enabled with OTLP.keep identifying resource attributes. And here we are arriving at the performance improvement section of our talk, because while not yet released, there has been a significant, shall we say, rewrite of the OTLP endpoint code in Prometheus. And what it means in practice is that there's no longer this intermediary translation step of OTLP write requests to Prometheus remote write requests. Instead, Prometheus takes the OTLP write request and just performs corresponding calls to the so-called storage appender. And this was done in collaboration between David Ashball from Google and George Krajcevich from Grafana Labs. And that was a stellar effort, which led to amazing performance improvements. So according to benchmarking, on average, we see a 36% drop in CPU utilization, 38% drop in memory utilization, and a 19% drop in memory allocations. That's really fantastic.
Yeah, so that's the collection of things that we've been working on, but there's still a lot to do to make the OpenTelemetry experience in Prometheus better. So there's sort of a lot that we're looking ahead to PromCon 2026 that we'd like to work on and hopefully finish, although it's a pretty ambitious list of items. In general, just improved maturity and optimization. There's still a lot of low-hanging fruit for performance. And maturity here refers specifically to getting things out of sort of beta level and getting it really stable. We definitely want full support for delta temporality. This is working on Bartek and Fiona's initial work of start time calculation. This is something where we keep having meetings where we look at the theory and it's like, this should just work. And then we'll have to actually do it and see, what are the performance implications? Are there edge cases? Do we have to worry about resets and things? But that's looking really promising. There's also existing work on resource attribute UX. This is something where there is not quite the same logical arrangement in Prometheus. And so that'll tie into the namespace metrics and labels I'll mention in a second. So yeah, trying to make that more usable for people when they're doing their queries to get at resource attributes. one of the biggest problems with the name translation is the question of label and name migration, metric and label and name migration. What happens when you've been sending data that has underscores and suffixes, and then you change to having the native OTel names? That's a huge amount of metric name churn. How do you deal with that? And it's also a problem, even if you start a new system with sort of native OTel, all of the stock dashboards and alerts and sort of community assets out there were designed for the Prometheus translation of the names. How do you handle that situation? It should be possible to write tools to rewrite dashboards. And then there's the work that Bartek was started for the migration schema that OTel has, which would be sort of a query time way of doing the lookup so that it would just transparently know which names you wanted. So there's still a lot of work to do there. And that's sort of a major question to make it a much more smooth experience for people getting onto OTel names with Prometheus. As for, namespace metrics and labels, resource attributes are part of this, and then also OTel entities are starting to come in. We're losing this idea that you have a single list of labels. You're starting to get groupings of labels. You've got resource attribute dot whatever, or you've got some or other sort of categorization. And that will require, work in the code, but then also in all of the query for, PromQL and things like that. How do you work that into the language in a way that's sort of natural and doesn't require a lot of text and that sort of thing? And then we're also looking at doing improvements on the Prometheus receiver, just making things better. So I wanted to do a short demo. This is a project called OpenTelemetry demo. It is a little fake telescope buying platform that generates traffic. It is a Docker image and a Kubernetes setup that you can use, and it sort of demonstrates a full OpenTelemetry stack. This is something that Cyril's been working really hard on, and is just a great way to test out the full pipeline. And what I wanted to do for this demo was, what if I flip the switch that says, okay, let's use no translation instead of Prometheus names, and what do you get? Now, from the user perspective, it's not very different. It is a bunch of panels, and that's what we would expect to see. And you really only notice the difference when you go in to edit the panels, and I have picked the wrong one. Let's try this one. That we are using the native OTel metric names for most of the queries involved. The process to rewrite these dashboards, there's many dozens of queries, was partially automated. To begin with, I used Cursor and said, please rewrite all these dashboards. It was actually somewhat successful. There's not a lot of existing material on the internet talking about this new format for Prometheus for PromQL queries. So I kind of needed to hit it over the head, say, no, it goes inside the braces. It had just as many complaints as everybody else has had. But then there's other issues where some things, not every underscore was a dot. You often like a duration, it'll be something dot duration underscore count. And so you have to have a good mapping between the two systems. But given the list of OTel metrics, it should be, it's trivially possible to create what the Prometheus version was. Going backwards is the trickier part. So this, and then also in Grafana, this totally works in the metric browser. You can select query, select metrics, do queries. It understands how to format. This is a good example of get underscore cart, latency underscore sum, but it just sort of works. And this is, demonstrating that we've got that working. And then another question that's come up is how does this work in alerting rules? Alert templates use the Go templating language. Usually use dot whatever. When you have a quoted item, the language says that you say index and then the object and then the thing that you're accessing inside that object. And it just works. It formats the strings just fine. I think a lot of this also came up yesterday, a lot of the difficulty in the move from underscores to full UTF-8 is it is a change in the logical idea of what a metric name is. And I think this comes, PromQL thinks of a metric name as an identifier, like a function name or that sort of thing in a programming language. But once you start allowing all of UTF-8, then it's really a parameter on something. It is more like a key in a map where you have a quoted selector. And I think that's the source of a lot of these rough edges. It's a big change in the way that you think about metric names. Whether or not you agree with that change is, there's, as we've said, the defaults are all staying towards Prometheus style, but OpenTelemetry is a big train that is not stopping, and this is the way that they sort of decided to do it. And I think, supporting that community as best we can is the way to keep Prometheus in use by lots of people and staying popular, which is, I think, what we all want. Yeah, that's it.
Thank you. One question first by me. Are you aware of any current efforts around integrating back service discovery into up metric for proper target health monitoring? So I know that the things that are supposed to be sending me data are actually up and sending me data.
Not specifically.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I heard some ideas being floated around some years back to have some synthetic up metric again, but I never heard more about it. So maybe you had, but yeah. Okay.
We wrote a ZyneDoc, but never got time to really implement it.
Okay.
I think that's patches welcome, contributors invited.
Okay. Who else? I saw a raised hand there. I have it.
No, it's not.
Needs to be green.
Now it's green.
Yeah.
I definitely pushed the button. In your vision, like Prometheus 4, 5, what is the out-of-the-box experience for OTel users?
Personally, I think this is Prometheus. And even though there is an OTel endpoint, I think the default should be the Prometheus experience. And I think, because that's the thing that's going to work the best. That's the way that this community has decided to arrange things. I would like there to be basically one flag that says I want it in OTel mode, and then all the sort of things that we've talked about, like the deltas and the type and unit labels. That stuff would all sort of turn on with that one flag. Right now, it's all these things that you have to kind of know to do, and that's awkward. But I mean, this is what we see, and I think even when people have done online polls, there's this like 50-50 split with this like, I want the Prometheus thing, and then there's people who are like, I'm working at a big company, I know OTel, my company is using, I don't even know, they don't even know about Grafana Cloud, they just know that their internal observability team has given them this platform, and they just want to say, this is my custom metric, it's got some dots in it, I just want to type that. So I think we can serve both those communities effectively without, I don't think you need to sacrifice anything on either side.
Hey, hello, here. I have a question because in the metrics pipeline, of course, the Prometheus server is not the only place where you could do the translation to Prometheus. You could also have an OpenTelemetry collector that does the translation and then forwards data. So I'm wondering how the collaboration there works. Is there a shared code that the OpenTelemetry collector uses and Prometheus, or like how does that work?
There is now. There are 4 Go ways of getting OTel into Prometheus. Is the OTel endpoint in Prometheus, is the Prometheus collector, the OTel collector, Prometheus receiver, exporter. There's the OTel SDK exporter, and then there's the collector remote write exporter. They all had different implementations of the translation code. A lot of hard work from Artur and me has now unified that into the OTLP translator package that's in Prometheus. It is one piece of code, but it also has a bunch of flags on it to try to not break everybody's metrics, is different, trying to maintain the way things happen. And this, I'm sorry if I've ever broken any of your metrics, it happens. Based on the differences in those packages. But now they're unified, and they will be more unified going forward. Yeah.
Just to add up to that, we will eventually need to break, because if everybody's doing differently and we want to unify, we created a library, we made it, we tried our best to make it backwards compatible with everybody, but our plan is to unify. So eventually we will release the OTLP translator 2.0, we'll remove all those flags, and people will need to decide how to do this unification.
One example is we had a customer that's like, oh, we were sending from OTel collector, and now we're sending to the endpoint, and our metrics broke. And it's like, yes, because the defaults on both of them were different. So you have to know to flip the right flag when you do that, and we want to get rid of that problem.
Hey, so yeah, interesting talk, thank you. On your slide about the deltas, I think I noticed one new function, rate over time, and I see it's not yet in 3.7, not as even experimental. So is that something planned? Can you comment? Rate over time.
Rate over time. Maybe that's a typo on the slide, because I know we usually use, some over. I know some over time is there. It could be a typo.
Okay. Anyway.
Anyone else? By the way, we again shifted by 15 minutes. So again, lunch is, when is it? 13:30. So we are like good on time. No more questions? All right. Then we'll have Andre telling us about UX research on...
Oh yeah, thank you.